three layers of principles. One to do with the natural forming. So slowly as we started implementing the natural forming work, we began with the four wheels of Palika, but as we went along, we ended up with some 9 principles of natural forming. So there's one layer. We call them universal principles, starting with all of them come from this fundamental premise, that is system by day, multi-layered, multiple crops without chemical. So that the premise, under that we get. So you ended up getting crop diversity, you ended up getting biostimulants, not as input but biostimulants, then local seeds, then you also probably got biological extract only to address pests. So like that 9 principles are the first one. Integrating trees, integrating animals into the natural forming. Things like that are coming to the first layer of principle. The second layer of principles are come from extension. How do you take enough from one farmer to more farmers? Enough extension. So that came because of the understanding that community institutions will take them forward. So we call them NF Saptasutra. NF Saptasutra. The principle emerged on this. That the people should come together and discuss natural forming. So that's the principle one. And if you discuss, then you should think about eating. That's the second principle, consumption. The third principle, if you have nothing, even if you don't have land, you might have some kitchen garden, homestead. So you do kitchen garden, that's the third principle. And if you have land, do natural farming. But to do natural farming, you require inputs, inoculants. So you need to have them shipped, and you may require some little money. Group should be able to produce, should be able to facilitate that money. The sixth principle. The seventh is to keep the cost. So modeled after SNG Panch Sutra. This is enough Sapta Sutra. So that is the second layer. The third layer is that how do you take from that institution or a group of small villages to more. That where this is emerging. What happened to us is that we require models. So one item is what is the model available for different farming situations. So do we have enough models to be able to take it to landscape? So that is important issue. So one is the models. So we call them A-grade models, we call them ATM models, we call them drought proofing models. So variety of models. Are the models available and are they further scalable models or not? So that is one. So model is not a model at the level of a 1000 base or 100 base. I am not talking about model for the individual family. What is that he or she can pick up? So that is the one. Second thing is that can we talk about not just farming, but can we also talk about food system? That means consumption, value addition and linking. All that together. Consumption, nutrition, then local value addition and linking with the market. So that whole thing, are we able to talk about this? So that's the second trigger. The third is that what is the institutional frame with which they will be able to take this up. Is it the SNG and federations, or an existing farmer producer organization, or a civil society organization in partnership with some existing organization? That frame, institutional frame is the third requirement. The fourth requirement is what is the government at that level is saying. Maybe collector, maybe ITDA project officer, maybe DRDA PD, I don't know whoever the government officer taking charge. Are they saying yes to this or not? There are fourth principle. Fifth is technology. Technology. Technology, now we are also talking about not just IT, not only for data, technology for doing food system work. Both kind of technologies. And we now, sixth one emerging, whether deep tech also is of some area now. So it is useful. The seventh one I didn't say earlier, but I repeat this. How do you engage each member every day? That is one principle we are figuring out. at least thrice a day, can you engage physically? If not possible, electronically. Can you engage everyone? Repeated on some issue or the other. If you don't engage, then this thing will not be there. Fundamentally, this whole work is behavioral related. Behavioral related work will not happen with one training, one discussion, or one dialogue, or two discussions. Maybe it will do it for 1,000 days. Maybe I do it for 2,000 days. And you need to engage them 2,000 into, we have said 3, it may be 4, it may be 5, I don't know. 2,000 into 5, 10,000 contacts are with that one single member. So that is the intensity of engagement is an important principle that they might take. So, and we also take earlier Ostrom into picture, all the institutions, principles of institution, they have to be taken care. I don't want to say, go into all those details. All the 7 principles of Ostrom are relevant for us. All relevant for us. But I don't want to go there. But whatever I am saying is in addition to that. In addition to that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, as we move on to the next session, and I think there are our panelists are here joining us from the morning, have been participating in when the cases were being presented. So I take this opportunity to welcome all our panelists to join us here so that we start our discussion. Mulit sir, please, and I invite Dr. Veena Srinivasan from Bell Labs, please ma'am. And I invite Mr. Nishant, Senior Program Officer from IUCL, and Mr. Meenaj, Director of Strategic Operations at Agroecology.
Yeah, that will be great.
We get this here.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Just to set the context, because a lot of participants joined us after the break, we started off with this theme around the centrality of landscape-based or area-based approaches in sustainable development. So the first half of the session was 3 case presentations from different parts of the country, presented by two from Odisha, one from Kenjor district, presented by Mr. Mansingh Durga Prasad Naik here, who's representing an NGO called WASCA, which works in Kenjor. The second presentation was by Ms. Gigi Vishak, who's representing Vasan, another NGO working on this landscape approach, particularly in Boypalguda block in Korapur district, Odisha. And then the third presentation was by Mr. Muralidhar, representing RYSS, an institution under government of Andhra Pradesh. They presented about the approach they are taking across different kinds of landscapes in Andhra Pradesh. Post the presentations, we had some question and answers and comments. Now, based on these presentations and in general also based on the work that each of our panelists are involved in, so we would like to take forward this discussion with some question and answer format, trying to unpack what does it take for putting the area-based approach at the center for sustainable development. So Anwar and I from Living Landscapes would be sort of moderating and asking some of the questions, and we will open it up to the audience following that for a wider discussion on this. I'll request Anwar to open up if there's any recap that we want to do, or should we start with it?
For the benefit of the persons who join this session. Three case studies presented in the first half. So there are some common things in the 3 case studies. So one of the common things that we understood is that how the area-based thinking is actually helping to bring some shifts. So the shifts are very different, and the means that they follow to bring the shifts are also different. So I'll just go by Oscar. Mansingh ji, he narrated, I think, how that landscape was, how was that, earlier, the kind of problems that they had, and then how that they have led into a regenerative landscape. That's the kind of shift, I think, that kind of journey that they have described. And they also, one of the key key messages that, what they say, is not project thinking that's important for us. So we have shifted even our thinking from project to area-based thinking. And that's one shift. Second, also said that I think the community institutions play a major role. That kind of a right understanding, awareness, and the leadership is very critical. In the story that they explained, that that how the community leadership has played, that also they explained. Third thing also they explained on the kind of convergence effort that happened. It's not that different finances, but also think a lot of government effort. I think how do you also work with the government? How do you also work with the different sources of money? And then that's another shift that they also explained. A very important thing that also said that how the technology, how the platforms, the common connects, and then also three tech tools that they explained, how actually they help in visualization, how that thinking that emerged from bringing the leadership from the community. That's that's one. The second case study that which Vishal explained from Vasan on bypassing where the somewhat similar problem and somewhat the kind of degradation direction that's going. Their focus is also trying to get one more layer that they explained. In addition to all these three, I think earlier 3-4 that I explained, I think also one thing that they added 1 or 2 more layers of the thinking. One of the layers thing that there are many NGOs are already working. And they also brought some effort in getting that all other NGOs also into the same common platform. That's one effort that they have done. Second, also a lot of investments are happening from the government. They also made an effort to get that the government actors also come onto the platform of this thinking. Third, actually also explained in terms of the kind of a overview and then the kind of a stronger perspective across different stakeholders. The community institutions, second across the NGOs, across the government, and their journey, and then I think that's an added thing. So the other tech tools that they also explain at this one. The third story, which we heard from Murali, from ROIS, is a government program, and share as a messages. One message is that what I heard from them, there is a knowledge commons. Even the knowledge has to be a common story. The common story, that's something that he added as one strong messaging. And then there was a description that happened. I think, look, even the shift that they want to do in the private agricultural land, there's a lot of knowledge is required, a lot of leadership is required, and the means they followed is farmer to farmer. And then they believe that in the women as the farmer, their entire story is keeping the women farmers at the center stage. The knowledge transfer is through women farmers. That one thing. Second message that also emerged very strongly is the definition of landscape. And the message from Murali is that it's not just that granular thinking is required on the landscape, but it's also, I think they also shared, they went into 18 months planning, but there was no action. So along with your thinking, but also start acting, learn by doing. So believe in the process of learn by doing, and also get to take the community along with you that learn by doing. That's the second that And the third one is the journey towards different layers of transition from within farmer or within farmer to from small parcel of land to the entire farm, and to the village, to the mandal, and also to the landscapes of of that region, and then also ultimately to eastern parts. So that's the kind of layering that the imagination they explain. And they believe on the importance of also having stronger convergence framework. And for all the convergence, I think they believe the community should play a center role. So this is what actually brought a message that was. Now I leave to proceed to
So I think I'll start with an opening question, which is more about based on the insights that have come so far around area-based approaches and different kinds of entry points that each one of them have presented and different kinds of imaginations that they've presented. And from your perspective, from the work that you are doing, so when we think of area-based planning, when we think of convergence, collectivization, interests of various actors, what are the different kinds of barriers or challenges that you see? And then maybe after that we move on to also see some of the hopes and stories or insights that are coming out to solve it. Maybe we can start with you.
Was it very good set of presentations in the morning and good summary also by Anwar. I think if we frame it as, let's first think about what is the shift that is required to go from whatever we were doing before. I don't know whether we should call what we were doing before project-based thinking or solution-based thinking to area-based thinking. So what is the shift from, it might be good, but let's call it project-based thinking. What do we mean by that? That there were certain, government was giving or CSR or philanthropy was giving some money for some particular, whether it's to valley, watershed or natural farming or something, and then project and CSOs were implementing it on a start to finish basis, spending the money, then going on to the next thing. This was probably the bulk of the way we were doing it. It's really important for us to say what was there before, so that we are making sure that we are not recirculating new, old wine in a new bottle. Now just calling the same thing area-based research. That's why I'm emphasizing what we were doing before was a very project-based start to finish. Now what's the difference from there to area-based? Is that here you're saying firstly the locus of power or decision making should sit with the community-based organizations, whether SNGs or it could be if we work in canal command areas, what is the cooperatives or FPOs or whatever it is, but collectives of people that live in the landscape who intend to own the landscape and not leave the landscape no matter what happens. Very different from an NGO, which today you're getting money from somebody to work in this landscape. Tomorrow the project comes in the adjacent district, you may reduce your engagement here and go there. So there is one clear difference, which is that the role of the CSO then becomes from being not owner of the landscape but service provider in the landscape. So, and now if you're saying that you're taking an area-based approach, that means you're first asking what do people need in this landscape, and then you're writing projects to meet that need, rather than saying what do I know how to do and I'm going to pitch projects based on that. That's the fairly key difference. Now I think if that's the shift, then what is required, and I think the panelists in the morning already gave several tools, but the multi-actor platform, digital tools, and Anwar mentioned that as well. I think there were a couple of things that were not mentioned, so I thought maybe I would start by mentioning those. One is, I think we talked about the common vision for the landscape, but I didn't hear the word metrics, like how do we know the landscape is doing better? And I think that, and I don't want to get overly numbers obsessed, but it's important for us to be able to say, are we making progress or not? Because otherwise there's a danger that we just keep doing, but we are doing, like a hamster wheel, we're just running to stay in the same place. So I think it's important for us to say there is this vision, but are we actually getting better? And at a very broad, even qualitative level, are we really being honest about tracking that? So I would say that's one thing which I think we should make part of the area-based approach. The second thing which many people said it in a roundabout way, but I think maybe we should say explicitly, is this idea of design thinking. So when you normally go from another way to think about the area-based approach is to say we are moving from solution-first implementation to problem-first implementation. And this is consistent. A lot of CSR donors and so on want you to do a needs assessment and so on. So it's not inconsistent with the donor landscape also. But how do you arrive at, and GGB has said this very nicely, how do you arrive at the, whether you want to call it a needs register or however you want to, whether you want to call it demand assessment, whatever the word you want to use for needs that emerge from talking to people that live in a landscape. However you want to document that, how do you arrive at a fair set of needs and not bias it so that we're doing this, or magically the set of needs that are emerging is exactly the set of things we happen to know how to do, right? And that's the real challenge in this, because all of us, I'm a water person, so I see water everywhere. If somebody else is a natural farming person, you only see natural farming everywhere. It's not because we're bad people or we are insincere even, but that's our natural bias. You see what you know. So how do we, and not what the community or the landscape needs, and that is a really hard thing. So I would say that if you build capacity in design thinking in all these places where these area-based approaches are happening, and create like force neutrality into the process, then that might be very valuable. Actually, and I mean, people said a lot about digital tools. I think one little bit of concern I have, which is great, I mean, I think we live in the 21st century, we should use all of the digital tools. The only thing is, I think we should not, just like we are saying that let's blow open the landscape to all the types of possible needs that are there, I would say let the tools also emerge, or the demand for tools also emerge bottom up, and not go with, we have these 3-4 tools, Commons Connect, and now these are going to become the mainstay of area-based thinking. So that's the only thing. I would say we need to also just expand the universe. So I'll start there. Whether you want to call them barriers or solutions, I don't know. Yeah.
I'll just say two good examples of how what happened. I want to say iterative is the way, not the one way. You're only saying that no, you only ask the community and make the plan and then look for funding. That is not the way, only way.
Yeah.
There is an iterative way. You start somewhere, do something, then you say plan, but other kind of thing. See, when Azim Premji Foundation met us and said, okay, we trust you to do anything in the area of national farming. And they said, we'll give you money. So therefore, the amount of money availability is also a factor in deciding how to go about it. You just can't say, I plan 1,000 crores, will they give? Or will somebody give? No, it doesn't work. Isn't it? There is a limitation there. So they put 3 conditions to us. Broadly. I take it as conditions. Okay? One of the conditions is there a champion for this one. And in the champion, Vijay Kumar is there. He is the champion, he will continue. Then we went and asked Chief Minister, can you continue him for long? Condition 1. So they said, the government said, okay, have it. The second, they said, department will not do this. Can you find a vehicle? So condition 2, can you find a vehicle? So then we looked around for 6 months to find a vehicle, right to Sadhikara source, find a vehicle. So the vehicle has been formed. That's the second. The third condition was, will you give money? So that's the third condition. So if some government gives money, then what is the role of philanthropy? Understand this. See? Minimum, what is the bare bone funding will come from government. If that is guaranteed, then whatever I do will be leverage money. I know that is going to happen. So that program funding was also expected from the condition of APF. I wanted a champion, we wanted a vehicle, and we wanted a program funding. Now when you might have been aware, government funding, for example, is maybe true for all civil society drawing money for governments. So funds only come with 2 to 5% administrative cost. Technical support, overhead, all put together is not more than 5%. So to do any new idea, any new work, 5% is too little. You may require 15%, you may require 20%. So this 10 to 15% money has to come from somewhere. So Azim Premji said, we'll give you that money. You try, when you require technical help, we'll give you money. If you require any partner to be taken up, we'll do that. So this is that. So these three conditions fulfilled, then the money is available to you to try things. Then we go about trying, planning, doing something and replanning, doing something and replanning on fast. So I'm just saying this kind of open money is required to be able to do this kind of work. That was instance one. My instance two is that when natural forming work required transformation, and it required the transformed people not going back. The second one, they don't slip back. Now, how do you ensure that they don't slip back? If you don't want to be slipping back, then they need to be having a support of systems which will not let them slip back, isn't it? Now, that may be community doing it, that may be government doing it, that may be policy doing it, that may be market doing it, variety of players. They have to do this work, and they have to be mobilized and organized, and that required help. That required lots of dialoguing, and pushing, pulling, all that. And they will not come easily. They are vested interested in this game. So that fight, that kind of fighting requires fun. And fortunately, we got one other donor. We said, going back. He said, okay, we'll help you with that. I'll not tell you what to do with this. You keep the fight going on. You keep the fight going on for this. They give money for that purpose. They didn't tell me what to do with that money, except saying that you will only want this fight for, fight one, fight two, fight three purposes. It can be people, it can be pilot, it can be model, it can be examples, it can be campaign, it can be culture, or related work, anything you can do as long as it is able to fight. So these are two dimensions. So I would expect this kind of thinking, iterative and openness to emerging plans, openness to support emerging plans. So these are the two things that are required in taking agenda into area. Agenda has to be area, agenda has to be global, it is not even area. Area is only one step towards global. Some issues are towards global. We have to do entire world, isn't it? Entire state, entire country. And area is the only way we can start adding more and more areas so that we become national. So those are the 2 points, activity and openness to emerging plans.
Thank you. One is the presentations this morning were really very rich. I learned a lot myself. The different approaches that are emerging from the ground, very contextual and very innovative. The first challenge I see with this is, while we need very contextual approaches, innovations and so on, one fundamental ingredient for scaling any transformation is some uniform language of transformation. See, if you think about watershed development, eventually it became a language. And that's how it scaled. It was adopted by NABARD, many other actors, and so on. Right now we are going through this very chaotic phase of moving from project-based approaches to area-based approaches. And I think one important piece of work that we all collectively have to do to solve this challenge is to develop that common language for transformation. I see this as a major challenge that we will encounter in the coming days. The other challenge is, in many instances, relying on the community for ideas may be inhibiting large-scale transformation. So if the community is not exposed of possibilities for value addition, for doing more with their land, they will be limited by what they know. Their knowledge is critical and the most important ingredient, but bringing other ideas to the table so that their thinking is enriched, and based on that we look at transformation would be very helpful. So how do we bring in ideas? Because ideas keep fusing together, right? Ideas don't just come from local communities, they come from markets, they come from everywhere. And that fusion is needed. The last thing is, as a challenge I see, that sometimes we plan based on what we see on the ground today. And some of these plans, as Murli sir has hinted, this could be very long journeys, 2000 days. Yeah. Things are changing in front of us. And the changes are happening on various fronts. One major front is how the young people see agriculture. What are their aspirations? And even in tribal belts where most of us are active, as literacy rates improve, the aspirations will change. How do we adapt our approaches to that? The second thing is the need in most cases, because our basket of spending is not just food anymore. And as the literacy rates go up, the quality of life goes up, the proportion of income that goes into food goes less and less. So the need is not just nutritional security in our communities in years from now, but also cash, income, well-being. So how do we ensure through these landscape approaches more and more value addition and making it aspirational for local communities? I see this as a major challenge as well. Thank you.
Thank you at the outset for the organizers for inviting IUCN to be part of this discussion. As Vin was saying, really insightful presentations in the morning and a lot of insights that came from the ground really, that we ourselves as donor institution, as implementers, as practitioners can learn a lot. But I wanted to focus on one of the challenges that, well, most of us, in fact probably all of us are really facing. It's about data. And we're not talking about paucity of data, we are talking about a problem of plenty. There is data everywhere. We have GIS data everywhere, we have data coming from on the ground, baseline assessments, probably people repeating the same exercises again and again in probably similar areas. Different organizations come up, they are working in the same areas, they are trying to work around the same issues again and again, and probably the things are not even moving forward. So there is a lot of data, but it is scattered, it is dispersed, it is disaggregated, and there is this issue of bringing some sanity to this data. So this is one of the challenges I foresee as going ahead as well, with the onset of machine learning, AI is just going to be huge, and at the same time it presents a lot of opportunity as well, because things like AI can bring some sanity to this data and derive the insights that we really need to work on. And as a representative of IUCN that works a lot on developing evidence-based, database approaches, I wanted to just throw some light on a couple of our own experiences. So for instance, IUCN is the Global Secretariat for Pond Challenge. For those of you who are not aware of Pond Challenge, it's a global goal to bring about 350 million hectares of degraded, deforested land into restoration by 2030. India is also committed a pledge to be part of this, and we have a target of 26 million hectares by 2030. It's also land degradation neutrality target. And IUCN was tasked to collate FLR or forest landscape restoration, which is again something that enables area-based approaches to collate all this data from across the country. Imagine we are talking about number of departments that are working on something like landscape restoration. We are talking about 35 states. Bounds for anyone to envisage. And then we started using an online tool that IUCN had developed called Restoration Barometer, which simplifies all this FLR landscape restoration and puts things into perspective. In terms of very simplified indicators, in terms of data that's already being collected by departments, but it gives you a framework to organize it. And once you have organized it in that framework, you can compare it, you can visualize it, you see the insights that come out of it, and that helps you shape your decision. So what I mean to say also links to that. So there are already available tools that we need to be aware of and we need to be using so that we can bring some sanity to the challenge of the plentiness of data. That is possible.
Yeah, I think I see that there are some of the important insights that are emerging, like how do we put problems first thinking or design thinking in place, and I think Moli sir spoke about using the money as a catalytic capital or unlocking a lot of public finance and a lot of that is available, and the common language that is missing today, and then knowledge commons, like the knowledge from various different actors, various different quarters, how does one look at that to access and sort of like the translation between the actors, how do we read that knowledge, how do we read that data, and data in itself, like the plenty of data that is available and all of that. Now, switching gears a little bit now, these are different kinds of capacities that probably are required for bringing area-based approach at the center. But one of the biggest influence around how this area-based approach is not seen or lacking is also how a lot of policies and schemes are designed, right? Like today, a lot of policies and schemes are also individual-centric or beneficiary-centric. So while it is cutting down on a lot of leakages and a lot of that kind of problems, so it is also not leading to sort of like looking at landscape-based or place-based approaches for development. And given the kind of crisis that we have, climate crisis, ecological distress, and which affects the livelihoods at large. So, what do we do for building that capacity in the spaces of policy and practice, and what is required to sort of like how do we frame this? To be able to also work on it, and what does it take? Like from your experience, if you could share some of the points around this, that would be great. Maybe anyone wants to share.
So a lot of our actions are also, governed by first the global level policy landscape, which then flows to the national level. If you are of course party to it, and then eventually it seeps in at the ground. So that's kind of a top-down way to look at it. But at the same time, the actions on the ground also feed into the the policies that govern some of the actions. But at the same time, they aim to refine some of the policies. So it's a connected feedback loop that works. Around those policies, that's something we learned the hard way because when the example I was sharing with you earlier, when we started reaching out to the departments, the first challenge we faced was the sensitization of the departments with respect to something that talks about an area-based thinking. They are all talking in their own languages. You go to watershed department, they're talking about check dams and so on. Forest department doesn't want to go beyond the forest jurisdiction. There is rural development, panchayati raj, tribal welfare, and they are often at loggerheads to each other also. It's not just a matter of them talking to each other, but it's also a matter of removing the barriers within their own thinking. So then we started to think how to, overcome this issue, and the simplest thing we could do was to bring all of them together on a single platform, and we started doing this multi-stakeholder workshops. Unfortunately, again in a projectized mode it was, but at least we were able to bring together all these departments that were critical for bringing area-based planning into action. So we brought them together, talked to them about area-based approaches, landscape restoration, some of the tools that are available to do this. And the whole purpose were twofold. One was of course to sensitize them and start seeing each other at least. They are in the same landscape, working on different things, but at the end of the day trying to achieve the same purpose. So first sensitize them, and second is also that they start mainstreaming these concepts into practice. So a lot of the actions on the ground are also governed by some of the plans that are there, the working plans, the agriculture contingency plans, GPDPs and other developmental plans. So, if we are able to push the agenda of area-based thinking into the policy planning, then that's like a good, first step that the policy and praxis gap could be bridged to a certain extent.
I was just going to say that, Kaushik, what you asked is, currently a lot of policies and schemes are DBTs, that's the trend. And a lot of work that we all get engaged in requires actions across individuals, through communities, common land, and so on. And that funding seems to be shrinking, and that's a concern. I will flip it. I spoke to some senior government officers, and their pushback was that whatever funding is made available, you can't even spend that. If you look at NMNF and many other schemes and policies, they are not being leveraged. So the onus is also a little bit on us to unlock some of this funding. And that's not easy, by the way, and bureaucracy doesn't make it easy. So I'm not trivializing it. I'm just saying that there is need to build capacities within civil society and other actors to unlock some of this funding, to engage with government officers, departments at different levels, and particularly the district level, where convergence is most possible. There is more work to be done. And my hope is, once we can demonstrate some of these area-based impact through all the work that is going on in the room and outside, I think some of the schemes will start to emerge for area-based work as well.
Can I go first? Since your government, you can have the last word. Because so I wanted to talk about, everybody's spoken about it already, which is the two things. We're never going to get one government agency which is the grand czar of everything, even in a particular area. Then to the extent, district collector and those offices are block level offices, they already are area-based offices. But you're never going to get forest department, water, this, that, everything falling under one ministry. It's not going to happen. It's always going to be fragmented. So the question is, given that institutional fragmentation will always be there, what can we do to overcome it as civil society? And then I'm sure Sir will talk from within government how it can be done. To some extent, I agree with Min that the onus falls on us as civil society. If you want to call it multi-actor platform anchors, or you want to call them system integrators, whoever is holding the area together, to actually make those convergences. And that's difficult. There is a side of donors where donors are also only giving you money to put so many structures, so many this, so many that, then who's funding that difficult piece? Because ultimately it's really a bunch of people running around from one office to the other. and somebody has to fund their time, and nobody wants to fund their time. So somebody has to pay for that gophers to run between offices. And we have to make this case to all the donor agencies out there, saying the biggest return on investment you will get is to have a bunch of people who run around between offices, do that 15% that he mentioned, and then adopt the unspent budgets. So that's a separate thing. But one interesting thing one government agency told me, and they run the Karnataka Water Resources platform, that one important way in which you can drive convergence at the area level, he was talking about a Gram Panchayat as being the area unit, is through data. And Nishant talked about data. He said the problem right now is even data exchange between agencies doesn't exist. So they were trying to create this this platform within Government of Karnataka to say we will be the hoster of all the platforms. They have to fight massive fights because the people who collect the data all hold on to their data. They don't want to share it with the other. Each agency feels the power is coming from the data. So the amount of effort this one agency had to do to fight the battles to get the data, they have to go to the chief secretary has to use the danda and say everybody has to give him the data, get the data sitting there, and then they opened up the data to all different agencies saying now we become service provider. It's very complicated because for many reasons. One is there are these absurd rules like for data you have to become somehow money making. So you have to sell your data and become self-sustaining, which is absurd. I mean, data is a public good. There should be, it's just absurd to tell some of these data collection agencies, we set you up with taxpayers' money, but now you raise your own money. And therefore, and then nobody puts data budget there within the agency to say, you pay that agency to get the data. So as a result, nothing gets transferred, and if nobody is working off the same data set, I mean, in Karnataka, we counted drain gauges itself. There are like 5 agencies which have their own drain gauges. KSNDMC, Water Resources Department, Department of Economics and Statistics, and probably there's a couple more which are slipping my head. IMD, of course, has its own. So that's absurd, you know. And so I think that one important driver of convergence is somehow architecting data sharing mechanisms. Whether, and I don't know, there will be many different models for this, but I think it's worth us talking about. And the second is convincing donors to hire, to fund people within your area, whatever you call them, anchor organizations, to act as gophers to actually drive convergence. And then the area-based actors should not be acting on a project mode, saying that we brought them together, now the project is over, we've dissolved. But if you're able to use that opportunity to make the plans consistent for the next 3 years. So I'll give you an example from urban, not rural. In Bangalore, for example, we have this big World Bank loan coming in for like 3,500 crores. World Bank also shocked because in Bangalore you have a lakes department within BBMP and you have a stormwater drain. Physically, stormwater drains and lakes are connected to each other. So you can't solve stormwater drains without solving lakes, you can't solve lakes. Those two people, they are sitting within the same agency, BBMP, but they never talk to each other. So to the point that then one of the key things becomes, can you make a zonal drainage master plan? So that involves the agency. So I think if we are able to drive some of that money, so that for the connecting of agencies to be at the plan level and not just the one time in a project they had everybody in a room, they got to know each other. I think that would be my second solution. To represent both governments.
Just a clarification here. You are on the panel as an independent.
Yes, but he'll have insight from government.
I just want to give that clarification. Because you are also equally connected to civil society.
We end up having policies announced. It's like a lip service, policy has been announced. Now, they remain lip service policies unless somebody puts pressure on them. So that is the first step. So, policy announced is not guaranteed that it will happen. For example, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years now, when National Banking Mission will come. Modi announced, Prime Minister announced, Finance Minister announced, Parliament is over. But they didn't take, only last year they finally said, okay, we'll do. And they give some money. So that is framework without budgets, no value. So announcing policy, then announcing budget, announcing a structure to do it, announcing a structure to do it, then having a structure to do it, all that will be critical. Just a policy announcement, 16 states in the country have a natural founding or urban policy. But they do nothing. They do nothing. And AP doesn't have a policy. Which is doing within farmers, but we don't have policy. So I just know the policy. So PM Pranav we mentioned, you said PM Pranav is there, we can track, but PM Pranav is not put a mechanism to track. They didn't put a mechanism to tap. The mechanism should be there. No? How do I tap it? And you all do the state government to tap it. And state government, how will it do some work without money? You have to give it. You get money to state government first. Then only they do some work, then only they can tap. So that is the kind of question. Structure, mechanism, all that is important. So the second is, within our own organization, like government organization, also there is a need for working together. Within our own organization, we require working together. And within our own body, the government, we need to work together. So who will make that work together? So that the will of the somebody who is very powerful, politically. They have to say, yes, this has to be done. This has to be done. We will be after this. Otherwise, we will not agree. We will not tolerate. So that kind of thing. So will is important. If the will is not articulated, will is not told, there is a problem. The third is, if the people don't put pressure, it will not happen. People, not just bureaucracy, common people, have to put some pressure, some manner. This is an area, this is important for us. When we start putting pressure on that, will comes. Political will comes because people have put pressure. And we discovered that if women put pressure, the realization of the will is higher compared to men putting pressure. So women have to put pressure. And they have to have the agency to put pressure. They need to get into those forums to put pressure, isn't it? So all that is a work that has to be done. That's the first thing about that. The second thing is that since the work is not always policy and funds and some work, it is also to change for good, long term. This is a behavior change issue. So this requires not one training, it requires a apprenticeship methodology. Work for a long time with people. Then the changes happen. Then there is no other way but to say, actually this is a new reality, we need to work around this new reality. So that kind of apprenticeship mode. We, for example, we have said, okay, you come here, take this learning on the ground, working on the model, you work there, go back and go for 1 week, 1 month, come back again, go back, come back again, like that. So repeated apprenticeship kind of method. Training paradigms also are changing for us. Particularly when you work with values, when you work with items, land, water, you require to work with them for long term handholding, long term troubleshooting, long term training. It's not one workshop, 2 workshops, they don't work. That is the reason why people who have done work have to keep telling that this work for me is just it. When Anwar and we went to the villages one early days when we wanted to do natural farming, all our science universities and departments, I can tell the name, but I will not tell the name right now. They said you do NF only over a dead body. That is kind of resistance they have got. Resistance to the work is so high. They just said you do over a dead body. It is not a science. Why are you doing this? And who will review my work when I publish research paper? Somebody who doesn't believe this. How will he agree to this? So look at the dimension. Therefore, this has to only happen with a large amount of members believing and doing it that achieve the little critical mass. Today they said they are the research leaders.
After how many years?
After 10 years. Yeah, I just want to say, that's the reason why I said the case study also patience. Long patience is required. We need to.
Thank you, Melissa. I think we are also short of time. So what I'm going to do is maybe because you started with saying this, that large critical mass of that kind of behavior shift or demand has to come, which motivates bureaucracy or any other actors to even start on that kind of a transformation. It takes a lot of time. I request the other panelists to chip in, like in a minute, as we keep talking on this approach.
To take one of the questions.
Yeah, we'll take one question from the audience as well.
We have to wrap up in maximum.
Okay, so then quick round of where, if you can share about like what is that one or two things that we can actionably do to sort of bring this area-centric or area-based approach. One is, it could be long-term, could be short-term. What could be those actionable things that we could do? We as in like different actors, at least the actors that are aligning on this approach, could do to make this needle move a little in the coming days. Quick thoughts.
I already said design thinking, so I'm going to say the other piece which Min mentioned, which is what we call servicification, which is that if you really want to transform an area, Min's already said this, all ideas can't emerge from the landscape, which means you need that, whatever you're calling response architecture, whatever the word you want to use, you have to come up with a word, where people from outside can come and say, we can help you with this, we can help you with that. Currently, our civil society is not set up for that, so we need to figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah, for me, I think I mentioned this earlier, if we really want large-scale transformation to happen, we have to collectively co-design some of the core principles of how this will be. We can all have very diverse approaches on the ground, which is required. But what is it that we can come together for that attracts government funding, private sector, markets, and so on?
I think I would say financial convergence is it could be a game changer, because I agree with Min to some extent when he says there is a lot of funding available already. Public finance is there, but we'll have to map it properly, right? So, so there are various schemes, MG Narega, Green India Mission, different departments have their own schemes and funds allocated to it. And they have this annual planning operation, wherein they allocate budgets to different activities. So we go with our plans to them and try to build in our plans into their planning processes, so that we are able to bring about this financial convergence, wherein already available money is at least made use of, and then we start thinking about the blended approaches.
So we'll open it up to one or two questions from the audience.
I think the panel has already reached the stage when we're talking about actionable points, but I think at the crux of it, all the three case stories and also somewhere here we were talking about GPDP as an institutional mechanism which becomes a mother of all the planning and implementation and monitoring. But I think there is not enough of investment in strengthening or making it possible. From your example, if there is any actionable thing that one can do, and it can become a policy guideline for all the states at a scale, if you can kind of give that.
No, I have a difference with Sinaj in the first place where he said GPDP has to be done. Okay, I just want to tell you, see, you can't converge at national level or state level and say, I give the money for the total plan. But they say, no, you go to the ground and keep pulling up people and do it. So we need to have an approach of both. Sometimes you have money on the ground and pull it up. Second time you can actually say, I have an area plan and I budget this. Government can say, I budget this. Governments can say, I budget this. Rather than saying that go to each one and beg, join. So I had that difficulty with Centrality in the first place when he introduced the idea 10 years ago. So this went through 10 years ago, that's why I'm saying. But because after all the 10 years, we are still having an example. 10 years gone. We still having a very, very few example. Why it is not within the national movement of GPDP? It didn't happen because we didn't really talk about budgeting for area plans. Why can't we budget for the area plan? That's a big question we want to raise. But at the same time, people put a lot of pressure with the civil society and the government organizations and the country. Work with the people and say, we want this. Repeatedly, then they will give. There is no choice. And the third is that why can't we budget and transfer that budget to GPs? If that budgeting, that money can go down to GPs. Right now, Government of India gives a direct line to GPs. So that amount can go up. That amount can go up. Similarly, the money, the direct line from Government of India to DRDS, that amount can go up and they can in turn give it to the communities. So they can cut the, whatever the money you take for area work, you cut from the other schemes otherwise. So you need to think about innovatively at the level of the state and the country. How do you redo this? Like in Kerala, 30% of the money belongs to people. Why can't we say that? Why can't we say that? They budget everything. Correct. They budget everything. So we are not having full political will there. In the way of satisfying there are ways and others, we gave with GPDP or something. But we didn't go forward seriously. If it worked, we did the credit. If it didn't work, okay, it didn't work. So I was just saying, I was the government of it at that time when this was happening. And I want to say, but critically, three things. Governments can think about actually supporting area plan. One, you need to put pressure. Second, people have to put pressure. These two if you do, and the philanthropic support, CSRs can say, we give an example how it works. Do this. Then if it works, government will do. Government will never do total piloting. They just can't do. They are not designed for that. It has to be done elsewhere. So somebody else has to do. Model is there, example is there. Now can you do this kind of thing more? Then government messages. So that is my understanding of the area plan. GP is definitely the first unit, best unit.
We are running out of time.
I think we can.
Yeah.
So because there are other sessions lined up, I guess.
Okay, one more question is.
Session, do you want to ask?
So the thing that man told, so the two things clearly emerged from program to reality. One, 2 years back, in one village of Panchayat, many government people, they were going and doing works like taking silo. Now, some intervention of the map process and other things. So if they come to this side people, those who are planted. So this is the way that is going forward. One. Second is that, so when we are scaling it up, we need to think very critically with the institutional group. Because when we are scaling with the thing which is the best practices. But also we should look more into that, the problem should not scale up. Okay, so that is where we are spending quite a lot of time. That these things we need to.
Okay. So I'll. Yeah.
More commenting rather than.
Yeah.
We will wrap up. So please. So I think they are available. So we can still have more catch up with them, also with the other three presenters of the case studies. So we can catch up with them in more detail. What on behalf of Common Ground, one of our beliefs is that there is no need to reinvent the wheel. There is a huge experience available. We also have to strongly focus on networking, connecting them well, sharing a platform. That's the case thing. We continue to have this dialogue, and this is in the sequence we started. And we also moving in terms of having that kind of a stronger network, capturing different views and thoughts. And the way it's said, the challenge is huge. We need to focus on multiple levels. One, the government should also start believing that area-based investments, area-based work is important. That's one message I think that's coming very strongly. Second, we need to have very strong ground actors. We need to have the map processes, the stewardship, the institutional processes, the panchayat system. I think that's the second. Third, also, the one larger message I see that look for adjacencies. We have so many schemes. The budgets are not being utilized. How do we also converge? How do we also look for adjacency? Adjacency may mean that when there is a program is happening, use that mechanism. Also get other departments that look for other languages. That's the kind of a broad looking. And thank you so much. Thank you for the panelists as well as also case study presenters.
So this is an ongoing discussion, so we request you to note the email ID if anyone wants to be part of it. We would love to engage from the common ground. Thank you.
I am